Finish up the business structure portion. I want to kind of review. I covered too much stuff yesterday, but I was one of those moves. We talked about the way that you set up to do business, the way you structure your business is often based on what are you selling and where are you trying to sell it. So the notion is that your ABC, you want to sell consumer products in Chile. You stay here in Arlington, you advertise your stuff on your website, and you have people prepay with PayPal. It's a direct export to the end user consumer of the kind of product you can put into the mail and ship to somebody. You're not worried because they secure payment with PayPal. That's the safest way to make it in one country and sell it someplace else. Next, we talked about what your book calls contract manufacturing at page 519. I call it offshoring. What is offshoring? What is offshoring? I know you know the answer. What is it?
Your product being
sold by the person.
the production of your product in a foreign facility.
That's exactly right. Offshore means off the U.S. shore. Where is your item going to be made cheaper? Why would you relocate production offshore?
Because it's cheaper.
It's cheaper. Labor costs are cheaper. So contract manufacturing is the notion that we can sell our products, we can make them here in Arlington for $20 a piece. We can sell them for $30. We just made a $10 profit. $20 to make it, we can sell it for a price of $30. Over here in China or the Philippines or Bangladesh, I can make it for $15 and still sell it for $30. I've doubled my profits from 10 per unit to 15 per unit. I've increased by 50%. So you can offshore to a place where production is cheaper. This happens all the time. This is the notion that Ross Perot many years ago said when we have NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, all these American companies will move their businesses and you'll hear a sucking sound of all those American located jobs being sucked down to Mexico. So that's contract manufacturing or offshoring. I've posted for you an article about outsourcing. What is outsourcing?
It's when the service is being, someone sources out the service instead of the goods.
Right. So the notion typically is within the making of our stuff, the generating of what we do in America, it's cheaper to have some of that, particularly a surface, outsourced to some other country. What's perhaps one of the first examples that comes to you about outsourcing?
Call centers.
Customer service centers. And the years I was teaching you guys years ago, I had a lot of kids making 10, 12 bucks an hour at call centers up in Irving for AT&T and other big telecom companies. Most of those jobs have been relocated. They're no longer available to you. You put your call center service operations in Bangladesh, put them over in Pakistan or India someplace, and you divert all calls there. What's good about that is, simply think about it. What would it cost to get a 27-year-old person working up in Irving 40 hours a week? They might expect $15 an hour. They might expect health care. They might expect life insurance or disability insurance. They'd have to have workers' compensation provided to them. It may cost AT&T $36,000 total cost of everything. Pay a 27-year-old $27,000. So it's expensive. For those same call volume, they diverted to India, and rather than 36 or 37,000, they pay less, maybe back down at 26. They're paying lower wages. They may not be paying as expensive health insurance, but it's cheaper over there. The exact same job done at point B as opposed to point A. No wonder when you call the call center, often you get a person who may be heavily accented. It's hard to hire people whose English is good enough. Very difficult to get people, if they can speak English, who can, quote, have more of an American accent, close quotes. I actually had a young woman in my 9 o'clock class who had been a call center operator over in Bangladesh for a company, which I thought was pretty cool. So there are lots of those kind of jobs, but they've taken the place of the jobs up in urban. What else might be outsourced? Let's say that I'm a radiologist and I have an MRI machine, have a bunch of x-rays, I get a lot of referrals from other doctors, I have a clinic, and together we do 300 a day x-rays and MRI scannings. You have to write a report of what you see when you take the MRI test or when you review the x-ray. That's labor intensive. I give the MRI in 15, 20 minutes and take x-ray in 10 minutes. A lot of time restraints on that, but the real time is writing all those 300 reports. I'll just have my MRIs and x-ray machines here. I'll send over to Mumbai or Calcutta all the x-rays and MRI reports. I'll have trained the people over there how to write those reports, and they'll do it the way that would be, how would they know that I did it? So they write the report, and I review their work. It's in the standard AMA adopted or hospital adopted format, and I've met our requirements. Now, since they're doing all that report writing, I can go up to 500 x-rays and MRIs a day, almost double my volume, and pay them whatever I can get them for as cheap as possible over in Bangalore or whatever. Other stuff gets outsourced. I've had friends who worked at accounting firms in downtown Dallas. They're writing very fancy financial reports on business valuations and complicated accounting stuff. They can rough it out. They can walk out the door at 5 o'clock, go home. It's over in Mumbai. By the time they get to their car in the parking lot, they come in the next morning and the report has been typed by people or word processed by people over in India who are away while they're sleeping at home. So that's a pretty cool thing some of the accounting firms are doing. What about business law tests? Could I possibly require every business law student here to take tests, not multiple choice, but an essay test? I have 345 of you. So if I took 10 essay tests from each one of you, that's about 3,300 or 3,400 essay tests. Can I grade that myself? No. Will UTA give me enough teaching assistants to do that? No. So what do? I posted the article for you. This woman, professor at University of Houston, found a company that has faculty, staff, lawyers who want to work part-time, whatever. They send them a model answer for each essay. They tell them how to check off for grading, and they send out electronically 3,300 essay business law exams in the course of a semester. They get sent back under a deadline, they get reviewed, and they get returned to the students, and the final grade is. That's pretty amazing stuff. I have one GPA for what I need doing multiple choice tests, and that person gets budgeted through the department. But our department surely can afford 6 or 8 or 10 or whatever number that you need people to grade all those tests. The woods are full in Bangalore of women who have law degrees. They maybe don't want to do a 40, 50, 60 hour a week grind at a law firm. So they're happy to have a chance to download 100 essay tests or 50 essay tests, grade them at the kitchen table with their child in the next room sleeping, and then send them back to the UT Arlington, let Mr. Miller enter the pile of grades or whatever. So you can outsource virtually anything that isn't location specific. So think about that. This young woman told me she worked at Men's Warehouse, and what they do is, let's say you want a customized suit. You come into Men's Warehouse, they take all your measurements, your arm length, your shoulder width, all of that, and they're gonna make you a customized suit. They've already bought the material, they send it over to India, and they have Indian women who will sit there all day and sew those suits for people they never met. All they've seen are their body specifications on an email. So everything gets done administratively in America. The billing, the collection, the measurements, the purchasing of material, all the actual sewing gets done over for people in India. What do you pay somebody in India to sew? Like every place else, as little as possible. That person might be a specialist in America. They might be able to command more. But there are lots of very talented people in the fashion business in Mumbai, other places who do all their fashion stuff. Any of you know any examples of places where you work about outsourcing? This girl, I never would have thought about that. In the olden days, they would come to your office, measure you, and then sew your suit back over at the store in Dallas, and you go by and pick it up. Now all the sewing is done, at least by Men's Warehouse, by people over here. Any examples you guys know about? Yes?
It's not a traditional outsourcing example, but it's actually within the state. So in the mutate library, actually, they have an outsourcing of librarians that you can ask online. It's kind of like a portal where you can ask any questions regarding your research paper, but they outsource it to all different kinds of librarians all over the country rather than just UTA specific librarians.
Okay. So you mean like I'm trying to do really fancy research, I don't know where to go?
Yeah.
Okay, so they're outsourcing consulting services on improving your research.
Right.
Maybe you're a professor writing really fancy, complicated stuff for chemistry. Okay, so that's an example. Anybody else got an example? Yes, Mira?
One of the companies that I used to work with, they have their website, all the text and all the website build, design, everything by a company in India that does that. They charge them like 10 an hour, while on the webs over here, like for anybody who's doing website designing, 10 an hour is basically like a joke.
Okay, so let's say you can find people, pretend like Mumbai, Hyderabad, they'll do it for $10 an hour, or something called website design.
Yeah, or well, any tech specifications that they ask, they just outsource it to people in India.
So this company maybe represents 100 Indian web designers. So you reach them through this portal. These people have this website.
Well, no, the company in India, there was like a group of like probably 10 web designers or whatever, and we just talked to their
Okay.
manager.
Okay, so what do you think your savings was? Say it's 20-hour project. Say it takes 20 hours to design a sophisticated website.
If it takes 20 hours, so I asked my friend over here who like graduated with a degree, and I was like, hey, can you do it for us? He was like, yeah, because I probably just do it for $30 an hour just to do it with a friend.
Okay,
And that was like outsourced to $10.
okay.
So that was like $20 an hour.
Okay, so if the quality is the same, which is always one of the issues in any project like that, quality of the end product is the same, why would you not do that? So the question becomes, for companies that do that, is this an ethical issue? Are you putting Americans out of work to get the same service performed cheaper? In other words, there are 200 people in the Dallas area who do website design services as independent contractors. Are you putting those people out of work to hire somebody over in India just to save a few bucks, $20 an hour? Is there an ethics issue there? Much less offshoring. What if Motorola, like they did, had 4,000 employees in this workforce, and they did a Warren Act plant closure, guys, all these kids under retraining program coming to go to UTA to go back to school and get an accounting degree coming back here because their jobs got offshore to Mexico. Is there an ethics issue there? Should Motorola worry about putting Americans out of work? What do you think, Mara?
Well, I think the ethical issue only comes in my perspective, is if you offshore it to somebody and the working conditions there are unethical. If you're thinking of a business ethic, right, then you're thinking of like
Right.
the ethics the business conducts itself by.
So what you're saying is, as long as it's just money, it's not an ethics issue. Why wouldn't you expect them to offshore
Because if,
or outsource?
because if they do that, that means we can produce stuff more efficiently. We can stuff produce more efficiently. That opens up a whole.
Right. So the notion isn't that American jobs get offshored, it's that certain types of jobs get offshored. So those people come to UTA and they become accountants or web designers or something else. So the total labor rearranges itself, but you don't just have 4,000 jobs that die in America because they're relocated over to Mexico. So that's an issue with outsourcing. I teach a course on international business, talk about that. And the outsourcing issue is simply dollar for dollar. So we go back to Bangladesh. You're making stuff here, it's expensive to make textiles, t-shirts, sweatshirts, shoes. So you find people in Bangladesh who'll set up parents, they'll pay them money. Hey, let your kids come work to us. The kids report, they're chained to a machine, they're put in a room that's locked, they're given potty breaks, 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in the afternoon. So you're gonna work for 25 cents a piece, an hour, or 50 cents, whatever the hour is. Is that an ethics issue? That's the working conditions that you're talking about. Okay, I mean, that's the issue. Now, you should, a lot of people work for Nike, and when Nike does any business with you, you have to virtually sign away your life that nothing you're doing for them is done by people in conditions like that. And Nike claims it sends out its auditors to all those locations that do anything in the supply chain for Nike, and they expect them to have no work conditions like the ones I described. Okay, so that's contracting. We've talked about offshoring. This is outsourcing. Now we talk about foreign distribution. What's a foreign distributor? Who knows what a foreign distributor is of my products? I am ABC. I'm making, let's say, kitchen microwaves or toasters for bread, microwaves. I can sell to a foreign distributor in pretend like Chile or Argentina. What does my foreign distributor do? Typically, that's right. Let's say there's a chain of appliance stores in Chile. This guy's got 16 stores. He's Mr. Chilean appliance store. He'll buy 2,000 from us. So title transfers to him. We've got our money. We're happy. He puts them on his shelves and he sells them to people who come to his store. So he's got 68 products. He just adds the 69. This is, as you know, how most goods you buy today come up to you. You know that Walmart doesn't make anything. I don't think Target makes anything. So why does Target make $108 billion? Because they can buy it and they can resell it in their stores. Say there are 1,500 Walmart locations in the United States. What a great place to sell my goods. So here's the question. I can make them in Arlington for $20. I can sell them at my store for $30. I make $10. I make them and I sell them for $10 profit. What's my foreign distributor going to pay me? I make for 20. I'm going to sell to him for, he'll say 26. He'll sell for 30. Why is that better than this for me, Mr. ABC? Why is this better? How much profit do I make on this transaction?
$10.
The difference between 20 and 30 is $10. How much do I make here? 6. So that's the standard for distribution. You're leaving money on the table. Why am I willing to give up $4 of profit? Only make 26. Well, I don't have a distribution, I don't have any stores, I don't have any police locations, I haven't built buildings, I've done nothing but ship it to somebody who hopes they buy smartly enough to make a resale on the uptick. So this is why stores like Target and most stores in America don't make anything. They buy it and resell it. They're all distributed. This is in the international context. What does this help me? Let's say this guy has 26 stores in Chile. By the time I go to Chile, buy or lease 26 locations, hire all those people to operate those stores, it more than makes up the difference. So I'm willing to give up $4 for profit as opposed to having a store. So that's the way the distribution business works. Okay, now let's talk about foreign manufacturing licenses, which is discussed here in your textbook. How does a foreign manufacturing company work? I make microwaves. I have the patents. I have the know-how. I can make microwaves. I go to someone in Chile and say, look, I'll license you my technology. I'll license you my know-how. Pay me a fee. You never own the IP, but you can manufacture it with my permission and sell it there in Chile. I try to negotiate an upfront fee, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, whatever. So I get my money going in, and then I ask them to report to me quarterly on all your sales, and I want a 10% royalty. What does that mean?
For each one they sell, that you get a percentage.
Right, each $100 microwave they sell, they'll keep a track and I get $10. So here's my problem. Might they cheat? Might they keep two sets of books? One set of books for them that shows $2 million of sales, and they show me another set of books that has $1 million sales. That way they're under-reporting their sales collected, and they're under-reporting, therefore, the amount they got to pay me. So what I do is I write into the contract the right to audit. But I can come down there, I can send in the dogs from PricewaterhouseCoopers or whoever, show me all your sales records, show me all your production records, and I can match up and hopefully discover that underreporting there. So that's what happened. Okay. We also talked about risk sharing. We talked about creating a wholly owned subsidiary. I'll just recreate my factory down in Chile. We'll buy the land. We'll build a factory. We'll use the equipment. You can build it the exact same way there, maybe here, maybe cheaper, whatever. So $20 million goes into the ground. The buildings are attached to the ground. The equipment's very expensive, hard to move industrial equipment around. So we put money into Chile of $20 million. And we, that is Charles Miller, Inc. in Arlington, owns 100 of the 100 shares of the separate Chilean company we set up. Charles Miller de Chile. All right, pretty straightforward. That's a whole lot. What if we know, let's find a partner. Let's have a joint venture here on page 518. Let's get a Chilean guy and say, look, it's a $20 million investment. We'll sell you $8 million worth of shares in the company. You'll own 40%. We'll own 60%, and you're our president. Go get it. Why might that be attractive to a Chilean manufacturing guy? He's operating a $20 million business, and he hopes he does such a good job that one day we'll sell him our 60%. What if a bomb hits the building? Totally destroys everything. We've only lost $12 million. He's lost 8. I'd rather lose 12 than lose the full 20 million as a wholly owned subsidiary. So compare joint venture, which is splitting ownership, to owning the whole thing yourself. Some more types of business we'll talk about. I'm Mr. McDonald. I can only sell so many burgers. There are already 12,000 McDonald's. What a great thing to go to China. Do I want to learn Chinese employment law and Chinese marketing law and Chinese real estate? No, I want to let a Chinese investor purchase a McDonald's franchise and take over all of that stuff. So this is a way to create my presence. I'll just sign up any good Chinese investor, hopefully with a real estate background and restaurant background, and they can operate the McDonald's successfully. I've made the money on the upfront fee, just like we talked about in the chapter on franchise law, and I get an ongoing royalty. Would I trust this guy? Of course not. I'll send to my auditors to audit him to make sure I'm truly getting the 10% royalty on all sales. Okay, here's a trivia question. I'm sorry, we'll skip that. What about Disney? Where do Europeans want to go when they come to America? I can tell you at least where the Germans want to go. They want to go to East Coast, see New York City and Washington. They want the West Coast, LA and San Francisco, or they want Disney World in Orlando. There's a magic appeal for Orlando, so that's where they want to go. So Disney has franchised its Animal Kingdom over outside Paris. There's a Disney park called Euro Disney, which they have franchised because it's easier for Europeans to get to Paris than it is to get to Orlando. So you can franchise anything for a huge fee, and Disney makes money not just in Anaheim and Orlando, but in Paris as well through this royalty on this franchise arrangement. And finally, we get to one of my favorites, foreign sales agent. Who is a foreign sales agent? Not in your textbook, but of course, I'm above and beyond the textbook. You're lucky. What does a foreign sales agent do?
He sells for a commission.
He sells for a commission. What kind of stuff do you think I have to sell to find an agent willing to sell my stuff? How about shoes? How about kitchen microwaves for $80? Do you think you'll find a foreign sales agent to do that? Or you find a guy that makes industrial equipment, he makes cranes, he makes jet engines, he makes automobile, whatever, and you hire this guy. How do you compensate him? You pay him a commission. How do you make a sale? He represents us. We agree to make it. We make it and we bill the customer, and the customer pays us. You never want the money to go to your foreign sales agent. Why? You want them to sell, make orders, and not handle your money. Why?
They can ghost you.
What?
They can just ghost you.
Right. They can take your money and no idea where they go after that. So you don't trust them until you've known them for many years. Here's the tricky issue. What if your foreign sales agent in India sells a $1 million vehicle, jet engine to the Indian Air Force? We bill them $1 million, they pay us $900,000. We're paying our state agent 10%. Do we owe him $100,000 or do we owe him $90,000? Okay. Anybody got another idea? Do we owe him $100,000 for the sale or $90,000 for what we collected? And what we collect, $900,000. Anybody here have a sales job based on commissions? All right, you tell me why that's an issue.
Some days, some people don't come in and you can't make any money.
Right, so some days salesmen don't make no money, and some days they make sales, but the money's never collected. And then often the company prepays commissions based on anticipated amounts paid, but doesn't get 100% paid. So then what do they do to you? Chargeback?
Yeah, I've been charged back once.
Okay, so chargeback means they pay a permission based on the amount invoiced. I'm invoicing $1 million, we'll prepay you $100,000. Way to go, Johnny, go out and sell more. The problem is 2 weeks later, we collect $900,000. We owe you 10% on sales and amounts collected. A sale isn't a true sale until you collect the sales price amount. So then we're gonna call you up and say, remember the $100,000 commission check we gave you? Can you pay us back 10? And that's not gonna make you very happy. Salesmen hate chargebacks. Salesmen want to be invoiced, want to be paid based on amounts invoiced for the sales they generate. Does that make sense? Understand the difference in billing somebody $1 million and collecting $900,000. The agent is going to say, I made $1 million sale, pay me $100,000. We're going to say, no, no, no. It ain't a true sale until we've been paid the price that you agreed in setting up the transaction. We're $100,000 short, which means pay us back $10,010. So those are foreign sales agents. And finally, we get to the disaster. All of this is to avoid one thing. And the one thing to avoid is your money has gone into the ground. You've got a subsidiary, you've got a partnership, you've got natural resources, you've got something in the host state. And they take a position, we have sovereign power. We can own all the minerals, all the subsurface estate. We own it if we think we own it. Just like the state of Texas, can they take your property from you? What did we talk about in chapter 4? What's it called? Starts with an E. Eminent domain. State of Texas says, look, got in Carpenters, got a bunch of land. We want to build for the greater good a DFW International Airport. This benefits, the whole community benefits. Mr. Carpenter says, I ain't going to see you. I love my cows. We don't care. We have the right to take. We can force him to accept our deal, our offer, and title transfers to us. Or we can fight it in court. We have a wonderful legal system. We have a whole body of eminent domain law. We have a whole wonderful legal system. What do you think you're going to get in Venezuela? Can the government simply say, by presidential decree, we look at Miller's plan and we want to buy that land and acquire? We'll pay him fair. Don't worry. Do you think you're going to get fair? If you're the big, rich American company in Arlington, Texas, and you're the investor in $20 million of land in Venezuela or any other country, how much sympathy will you get in the local government offices? Do they want to pay you fair? They probably want to get you as cheap as they can. And what you going to do about it? So from a foreign, you're called an alien, A-L-I-E-N, you're an alien investor in the home state. So in all of these options, up until joint venture and wholly owned subsidiary, you're not putting money into the ground. But the minute you start putting money here, you're at risk of nationalization. There's nothing to nationalize here, or here, or here, or distributors. We're safe, we're in America. But the minute we put our money in the ground, it's subject to nationalization. You know you're going to get fair here. We have Texas eminent domain specialists in legal system. We have special courts set up to hear those cases. We have a lot of people there. What justice will you get? Not much. Exxon had lots of oil in the ground. They paid the government for the right to go for oil. and they keep all these barrels of oil, millions of barrels in the ground because they don't want to pump it out yet because the prices are too low. So Exxon has millions of barrels in the ground, which they own. The government comes in and says, we own it now. And this is what happened to Exxon. Not that I feel sorry for Exxon, don't get me wrong, but how are you going to fight it out? Their appraisers say the oil in the ground is worth $1 billion. I'm sorry. Their appraisers say it's worth $11 billion. I apologize, I'm drunk. Just kidding, just kidding. Exxon says it's worth $11 billion paid. What does the Venezuelan appraiser say? It's worth $1 billion. Do you want it now or later? So good faith people can differ over what fair market value is. So Exxon and big oil companies have bazillions of dollars expropriated by nationalization. It's in the ground, the government moves in. One of my favorite stories from ever being in classes at UTA, there's a very good Mexican company out of Mexico City. I think it's called Cementos Mexicanos. It's a big producer of cement. Why is that so important? The cement is the foundation for houses. So only a handful of companies in the world are industrial makers of cement. But this company is called Cemex. So they had a huge operation in Venezuela, making tons and tons and tons of concrete. Okay, so the story was told to me about the woman who worked in Mexico City for the president of the company. So everybody's happy, they're making money like crazy in Venezuela, selling all the concrete to all the people. Suddenly the president's office gets a phone call. We just nationalized the cement industry where your company is. We just acquired all that land. We're going to come in and take over operation of the cement manufacturing plant on Thursday. This is Monday. Any damn Mexican we see, we're going to shoot and kill. So get your damn people out of here. So you've got 3 days to get all these bright Mexican engineers who were there frantically out of the country before the Mexican military comes in. I'm sorry, the Venezuelan military. So this woman told me how terrified these people were. We're going to be here Thursday. They're going to put us in jail. So they had to quickly extract all the people in 3 days. So you tell me, who's going to make more cement? A bunch of Mexican engineers who got degrees and have done this for 30 years, or a bunch of Venezuelan military people? Who's going to do a better job? Obviously, the Mexican engineer group. So quickly, for political reasons, this is a great thing in Venezuela. We're kicking the North Americano bastards out. Venezuela for Venezuelans. Everybody applauds. That's great. Yay, go get them. No more North Americanos. The problem is what?
There were no more workers.
The cement production drops down by 80% quickly, because there's more to make in cement, like most things in life, than you think there is, and fewer houses get built in Venezuela anyway. Why is this so popular, though? The Venezuelans loved it when their president did this. Why is that so good? Anybody here been to Venezuela? Anybody flying to the airport in La Guaira? You fly into the airport, you go to Caracas, you go to a town called La Guaira. La Guaira's on the ocean, small town, never heard of it. Here's Caracas over here. How do you get to Caracas? You go up and you go down and up and down and up and down. It's a mountain to get there. So I flew into La Guaira. I get in my taxi to go to Caracas. And what do you see on the sides of all these hills? Homeless Venezuelans. So this person builds a little hut. This person has a little concrete pipe. They put a little paper over the side to keep it warmer. So you got this house and this house and this house and that. They literally have hundreds of thousands of people squatting on land that's in the mountain trails as you go to Caracas, which of course is a big modern city. So the question is, how do you get these people to vote for you? If you're the head schmuck in Venezuela, what do you promise these people?
Housing.
Housing. I'm going to build you a house, or I'm going to give you concrete at 10% of the price. So that is why Chavez, Hugo Chavez is his name, is the president of Venezuela, and he promised a house for everybody. And all these people on the sides of the hills, of course, get the green card. By God, I want a house. And that's great. So he shows, look what I'm doing for you. I'm kicking out the Mexicans, and now we'll hire only Venezuelans. They'll be the top dog engineers. We'll build houses, and ain't no more profit taking on your backs. We're here to help you. And of course, what happens is there are a lot fewer tons of cement, which means there are a lot fewer houses, and which means Chavez doesn't get to deliver very much of his free concrete or concrete at a 90% discount. So just as a trivia question, what happened to these people eventually? Even I, who know nothing, was stunned at all these houses and shanties on the sides of this hill. I say to myself, what if it rains really hard? What's going to happen? They're going to collapse like a chain effect. To this, to this, to this, they're all going to come sliding down the hill. And sure enough, 5 years after I was there, that's what happened, and 20,000 of these people got killed. Shockingly, they're still there. They haven't been given a home with free concrete yet. So that's the way the world is. And you guys know what it is. When I came to UTA originally years ago, there were no Venezuelans, very few South American kids. And a few years ago, you used to have a lot of Venezuelans. Why? Their parents simply said, get out. As long as Chavez is in power, you don't want to live here in Venezuela. They're taking over all the foreign investment and making promises to the locals that are not coming true. Chavez died, and now a guy named Maduro has taken power. What has Maduro done? More of the same. So the concept of wealth for all is a socialist concept. We don't want no capitalism. We don't want no private party taking. We don't want no gouging of the little man with too profitable business. The socialist concept is we develop the resources in common for all people and resources, and that's what you get. Millions of people have left Venezuela. I think 4 or 5 million of people have just said, I can't do it anymore. To give you an appreciation, I've talked to Venezuelan students who can't find razors or toothpaste in the local stores. So they are sending back to their parents between classes at UTA, toilet paper, razors, toothpaste, toothbrushes, stuff like that. Because those businesses have gone to heck because of the impact on the Venezuelan economy. So I'm a real anti-nationalization guy. Why is Saudi Arabia so rich? Oil. Well, why does Saudi Arabia get to keep it? Because they own everything in Saudi Arabia. We are unique as a country. We let tribal people own subsurface minerals. Most parts of the world, the government creates property laws for the surface, but keeps ownership of the subsurface. What's it worth to be the government? Who discovered oil in Saudi Arabia? Europeans. Who owns all that oil? Now Saudi Arabia owns it. What happened? They simply told the Europeans, you have a choice. You can stay here and make some money, but you're never going to own the minerals. We will own the minerals. That's why Saudi Arabia owns all the mineral estates. And there are oil wells in Saudi Arabia that kick out 75,000 barrels a day, which is a heck of a lot of money. So appreciate that nationalization of subsurface minerals is where many nations start. Who's the naughty boy in Mexico? Pemex. Who is Pemex? Who doesn't play nice?
The government.
What is Pemex position in Mexico? They own all the subsurface estate. They also own the refining businesses, the service stations. They own every aspect of getting oil out of the ground, refining it, and selling it. They're a huge, huge power to be dealt with because the government owns all the resources, designates Pemex to be in charge. We'll get to that in just 1 minute. One final comment. Who is Salvador Allende? Anybody here ever heard of Isabel Allende? She's a very famous writer. Her brother became the president of Chile, and he nationalized the copper mines. In other words, the copper's in the ground. They lease it to American companies who extract it. Where do all the profits go back? To American companies in New York City. And the shareholders get a higher stock price. Allende said, I'm going to nationalize the copper industry. And the American copper companies didn't like that. So what do? How do you get rid of Salvador Allende? What's that?
The CIA.
Right, you have the CIA coordinate a coup, and they kill Allende as he's on the radio, apparently talking to the troops, hey, come help me. There's the gunfire in the background, and the president gets killed in the coup that's funded by the American government. I will post that for you as a 5 to 10 minute video to show you kind of the harsh aspects of nationalization. Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break. Just getting going. Hope not.
So take 5 minutes from Counter-Strike 4 to load up.
I'll say what my answer for
I've got another studio house. Which student? I'll let you Wait a minute. And now, first name?
They're all not that.
Right.
That's hard. No one's got it. You know what? I mean, It's just a lot.
Go, turn on your.
And everything is connected. I told you at first, like, you do a lot of team work. But after a I think it was just
All right, what is corruption? What is corruption? In parts of the world, one of the big impediments to doing business, and employing people, is corruption. Corruption is a barrier in any part of the world to doing business. What is corruption? What's the classic example? Yes.
Is it like being dishonest or fraudulent?
Right, it's the notion that you are a government employee. Remember, Pemex is a government, part of the government of Chile. You abuse your personal power to enrich yourselves. You legitimately have power, you hold a position, and you'll do business with people if you help me. How can you help me? I get to decide whether we give you a contract to do $1 million worth of oil rig construction in Mexico. What are you gonna do for me? Wink, wink. And one way or another, you try to put the money in your pocket to enrich yourself, regardless of whether that might have been a decision in the best interest of the government or the people acting through that particular government agency. So corruption is an abuse of power at an individual point at which you think of yourself first and not what's better. So the simplest way to explain corruption is you're in charge of building a government building in Fort Worth. You have a competitive process. One person will build it with City of Fort Worth money for $10 million. Another company will build it for $9 million. Another company will build it for $8 million. Who do you go with? The $10 million company. Why?
Because it's city money.
But I mean, why did you choose the $10 million contract? What did they do to influence that decision-making process? They bribed you. They slipped you an extra $500,000 in a bank account under a fake company you created in Florida, Sand Investments of Florida, Inc. That's your company that you created in accordance with Florida law, and it gets a $500,000 transfer, and you're the owner of the company. So you hide it through maneuvering paper. So what's the problem with this is there's $2 million less of public money to build highways, repair roads, open up public health clinics for people. $2 million less for good, noble things, because an extra $2 gets sucked up because someone put money in my account. So corruption is about employees on the government payroll to take advantage of their influential position. So the U.S. companies out there have to compete with German and French companies and others to get the attention and interest of foreign government officials. And there are a lot of sleazy stories. So Congress in 1977 passes the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act on page 519. The FCPA is a federal statute passed in 1977 that says if you're an American business and you operate abroad, you must live by these rules. You cannot pay a bribe or anything of value. Of value to a foreign government official to get business or retain business. So the FCPA prohibits bribes or anything of value to a foreign government official to give you contracts. So what is a bribe? Typically a suitcase full of cash, right? You know, here's your $2 million. I'll leave it in your office when I come by and water your plants. It's yours, no questions asked. What is anything of value? When I used to do a lot of business down in South America, one thing I thought was so strange is all South American people I did business with wanted to go to Miami. Miami is Valhalla. So what if I said, I want your $50 million contract, I'll have a 2-week vacation for you and your wife, I'll take care of it, wink, wink. So that's not necessarily cash in a suitcase, but this is a 2-week free vacation with your wife to a pretty fancy hotel in Miami. And a lot of business decisions get done on that basis. It's not just cash in the suitcase. So why is this bad for American companies? Why does the government prohibit giving an offer of a bribe or anything of value to a foreign government official to get or retain business? It's the anti-bribery provision discussed at the bottom of page 519. What's wrong with the good old bribe? Why is that a bad thing? Here's what's tricky. What if Mexico does not have an anti-bribery statute for a criminal accepting of bribes? Remember, all the U.S. can do is prohibit the offering of the bribe by the U.S. employee or the foreign employee working for a U.S.-based company. What if Mexico doesn't care? We still have the FCPA. So we'll talk about that in a little while. But back to my basic question. Why does our government care about American companies?
Because it's government money.
No, these are private companies. You know, this is Exxon, this is IBM, this is Apple.
International relations.
International relations, because a lot of these bribes are strategically placed and may adversely impact a enrichment of a person we don't like in that country. So you're bribing Indian officials, paying lots of money, and we don't want to support those people or those companies. We think they're bad for India. What are other reasons? Who do American companies report their finances to every quarter and every year? You're publicly traded. You're Apple. You're supposed to report your quarterly finances to the Securities and Exchange Commission and Wall Street. Are you doing your business the way you're supposed to do it? How do you report bribes?
You
In
don't.
the great corporate ledger book.
You
You
don't.
just don't. You keep them off the books. So the $2 million you spend on bribes to get business in China just don't ever get reported on the books. What does that do to the reporting to the SEC? You're hiding $2 million in expenses. So you're overstating your profits by $2 million because you're ignoring $2 million in expenses. So you're misreporting your true financial state when you don't honestly report all your expenses, and no one's going to create a financial ledger that says bribes to foreign government officials. You always bribe people ultimately you cash to get rid of the paper trail. The cash has got to come from someplace. Get it out of the bank, convert it to dollar bills, put it in a suitcase, hand it over. It's never reported. So there's a lot of under-reporting of expenses and screwing up accurate reporting. That misleads investors. So for a variety of reasons, our government says we prohibit offering bribes or anything value to foreign government officials to get a retained business. So here's just a trivia question. Why do you care? Here's a reason you might care. You're in UTA, you're taking finance or economics or something to do with business, and there's a big bank called Mellon Bank in New York City, one of the biggest banks in the world, and they want to hire interns. Wouldn't you love to have an internship in New York City working for one of the biggest banks in the world? Of course, those are great jobs. So maybe they come to campus and maybe you submit resumes, hoping to be hired as an intern or get an interview. What could be more fun than Manhattan for 9 months during your junior year or senior year in UTA? Pretty good gig. Here's the problem. One of the things Bank of New York Mellon does is they manage money. Rich people, rich countries, give them, say, $2 billion, grow it to $5 billion. We'll give you more money. And they charge a fee for money management. So you're a Saudi Arabian treasury official. God knows how much money there is in the Saudi Arabian treasury, since they own every barrel of oil that gets pumped out of Saudi Arabia. So they get $2 billion. Here it. They'll bill them a 2% commission. What's 2% of $2 billion? I don't know. 5 million, whatever. They like it, they want more business. How do you get Saudi treasury officials to like you? Hell. If you have a son or daughter, have them apply for an internship. Don't send it to recruitment. Just send it to me and I'll walk it down. So sure enough, that's what they tell all the Saudi treasury people. They submit resumes directly to their guy at Mellon Bank, and all those kids get hired. Here's what's amazing. I'm not even sure they get interviewed. They just get hired quickly, and they all get hired. So the question becomes, somebody rats out the bank to the U.S. government, and they come in and say, look, this is a Foreign Corrupt Practices Act violation. Why is it a violation? Because of what? They're bribing them. Hey, we'll employ your kids. It's not that we'll give them a job, it's that send your resume to me. So let's say that 20,000 kids at UTA, UT, SNUT, you apply, they go through the regular process. Might take 3 months, might take 6 months, might take a year, but eventually we'll get back to you. If you're son or daughter of a Saudi government official, dad will send it to his connection. We'll let you know the next week. And I think they all got hired. So the allegation is this is not cash. There is no cash bribes being offered. It's something of value. What's the something of value? We'll employ your son or daughter, give them a great resume filler on the resume, and they go to apply for a job later. Pretty good stuff. So they got tapped for $16 million. So that's how the FCC. I'll post that case for you. It happened 2 or 3 years ago. It's actually pretty funny. In many parts of the world, there's common corruption. There's big dollar corruption, and there's what's called systemic corruption. Can anybody tell me about systemic day-to-day corruption in a nation where you may have grown up, or in a nation other than the United States? Is there any corruption in Mexico? Okay, give me an example.
Dispensaries in Tijuana.
Excuse me?
Nothing.
What did you say?
I said the dispensaries in Tijuana.
What's that? I don't explain.
The dispensaries, like where you can get like drugs like weed and like.
Okay, I'm calling that criminal activity. Oh, okay, okay. What's corruption? Has anybody here, and I'm not picking on Mexico for any reason, all my students have told me these stories. You're driving your car and you get pulled over by a policeman who says you just ran a red light, which is interesting because there's no red light there, but he's going to write you a ticket because you ran it. Is there any chance they'll say, here's the ticket, I can write it for 300 pesos, why don't you just pay me cash, and they'll won't. Has there ever been a corrupt policeman in Mexico? Right. So the stories that I get from my kids, I'm not making this up, I'm not picking on Mexico, I just know lots of kids who tell me stories. It's pretty funny. Americans are told never go to Mexico and rent a car. That they'll know you're an American and they'll try to rip you off. Well, I started telling the story one time, and all the Mexican students had better stories than those. So you think it's hard to visit a corrupt country, it's hard to live there 7 days a week and have that kind of daily corruption. Letty, you're smirking. Tell me a story.
No, I personally don't have a story, but what you're saying with the police, that is not common.
Okay, so those are stories that I've heard. That's just petty corruption. That's nothing at the PMEX construction level. My company used to do business in Mexico. We were a nobody. 20 employees. We finally quit. Why? Because every single person at PMEX who has to license us to operate, has to license us to drill, all of those people wanted paybacks. Without exception, we just gave up. We're nobody. Think of what the Exxons of the world go through. One of my favorite UTX stories is there's a Mexican consular office over in Dallas. What's a consular office? Mexican government has an official office in Dallas that's here to assist Mexican nationals and persons who have relatives in Mexico to help Mexican folks who need help. I had the head consular office guy come out to my class. I was so proud, great speaker, great guy, just loved it. 2 years later, his name's in the Dallas Morning News because he was operating this office in Dallas where you have to get things done, notarize my document, and to pay this fee, and he was taking bribes for when we'll get to your stuff. So let's say that I'm a Mexican national, I'm up here at UTA, I want to get some documents notarized officially so they have legal status in Mexico. You can do that for $10. We'll get to it in 6 months. Or take it over here and give them a little extra and they'll get it done quickly. So from 6 months or 3 months, he goes to 12 hours. So he's not doing anything he can't do. He's just pushing your spot up in position to get to your paperwork first. So he got arrested because a lot of Mexican nationals complained that, hey, he's ripping off my mother. My mother's trying to transfer title to property back to Mexico with an official Mexican notary public in the consular office. This idiot wants extra money. So finally, the Mexican government just says, that's great, we'll take care of it. And they send in some guy, poor guy got literally, with the assistance of Dallas police, put in handcuffs, driven to the airport, and flown back to Mexico. And that's the end of his entire career with the Mexican government. So that's just the stuff that happens with corruption. So the FCPA tries to address corruption. Does corruption hurt Africa and Asia and other nations which are trying to build better highways, better roads, better infrastructure? Yes. Where are the most corrupt nations? Do you have to understand going in how corrupt some nations are? What's really going to happen when we get to Russia or China? How do you rank corruption? There's a group called Transparency International. It is a very big nonprofit company that promotes fair, transparent transactions in international business. Why are people poor in Malawi? One reason is American companies don't go there. Why? Because they don't want to do business there. It's not that we can't hire good people, but we'll be shaken down by all the government people who want the bribes before they approve our transaction. So they decided to create this nonprofit. Transparency International is their name. If you have any interest in the topic, they have a wonderful website called transparency.org. You'll see them discussed here on page 519, and at the bottom of the page on page 519 over to page 520. They publish a corruption perceptions index. So before you do business in a country, companies go look it up. How bad is it to try to work there? Look at Exhibit 22.2. They rank these countries. The higher your score, the better you are, the less corrupt you are. Who are two of the least corrupt companies according to Exhibit 22.2? What's it like to do business in Denmark or Singapore? Less corrupt than doing business in Afghanistan or Russia, which are ranked most corrupt because they have the lowest score. So I'm not saying it's perfect. How do you measure corruption? I don't know. Everybody's trying to corrupt on the slide. But one way or another, they put together this corruption perceptions index and let you know about how they rank. Is the United States the least corrupt country? No. You see that we're at 69, and Denmark and Singapore are up in the mid-80s. What about China? China is at 41. So China's 41 on the scale going downward means bad. We're at 69, and Denmark's at 87. What does this tell you? Look at, where do you not want to do business?
Russia.
Russia. I've heard that Vladimir Putin gets a little piece of all the action in Russia. And you want to do business in Russia? That's fine. Who's got to prove it? A government agency. Who's the head of the government? Vladimir Putin. So Vladimir gets a cut of every contract. I've heard that Vladimir Putin has $200 billion in various banks around the world. How do you make $200 billion, making probably a $200,000 a year salary the last 13 years? How do you get $200 billion? You get a piece of everything. So that's one of the reasons you have political issues. It's why you have issues in China. I found out something interesting yesterday. The president of China, Xi Jinping, has a 26-year-old daughter. She comes out of college in America. She's back in China to get a job. There's COVID in China, so they create a government agency that buys all the COVID vaccine, all the masks, all of everything used as part of anti-COVID. Who's in charge of that agency at the age of 26? Do you think a 26-year-old person should be in charge of a multiple billion-dollar spend for all those coats, boots, masks, COVID vaccines in China? And she's the president. So basically, she's going to take a $250,000 a year job, and how many people are going to bribe her, and who's going to say anything about it? Because guess who her daddy is? And in a country like that, he looks at you and says, you're dead, you just don't know it, and pretty soon you'll be dead, and you'll know it then. So that's the corruption that's much a part of the world. I'm sure not saying we don't have corruption in this country. What is La Mordida? What's that? It's a bite. In cultures like in Mexico, it's considered a sign of respect. That if I'm going to sell you something you agree to buy, I will thank you. I will show you respect by giving you a little bite. I just put $10,000 in your account, show you how much we value, support, and enjoy working with you, and that's $10,000. What if it's okay in Mexico? Can it still be a Foreign Direct Practices Act violation? Yes, but Mexican culture makes that the norm, and the FCPA doesn't care. Okay, gonna have 2 minutes. Write down what you don't get from the last few days of lecture. I'll get them going out the door. Okay? Help me know, just write down what you don't get. What needs more teaching? What about screwed up? Tell me what I can teach better. What we can cover Monday, which is our last class day.
Wow. These are nice.
Let's limit ourselves to chapter 22.
Oh, yeah, they got it. I think so.
All right, just take some time. What do you need help with? Yes, sir. All right, what do you not get? What needs help? What have I screwed up? Try to focus on chapter 22. I'm sure I've screwed up other places too. What have I not explained well? I know you need more paper, right?
No, we got it.
Oh, we have 5 more pieces. Oh. Yes, so practice quiz on Monday. Practice quiz on Monday, and I'll tailor it to what you tell me you have a hard time understanding. So that will help you hopefully learn it through the practice quizzes, but tell me what I need to ask you. All right, I'll be outside. As you leave, just hand me your paper.